And here we are.
And here we are, back at the table. Thank you for joining us.
You'll notice that there are three of us here again tonight. We love having a guest host. And today it is our good friend Mike. Laura, why don't you tell us how Mike fits into this crazy picture that's our life?
Absolutely. Mike and I are childhood friends, went to high school, went to the same town of college.
But the Legion started, I think, 1957, so that's a big gap, of course. And we didn't really have as many things. There was no eBay then. There was no way to go get those. Luckily, you could go to, ideally, some local thrift stores, if you will. Maybe there was a comic book store. You could find some things. But at that same time, DC was putting out little digest books that would have some retelling of some of the old stories, which was fantastic. So you get like a couple of stories in each. So the Legion would have in the adventure comics, as they actually started in adventure comics back in basically the 300s. 247 was the first one, Holy Grail. But I can still, as you see, still go back and try to collect those. Just got these about 2 weeks ago. Still trying to fill in all the gaps of my collection.
And where did you get those? It's a good shout out. Try to shout out to where you go most often.
I go to Memory Lane Comics in Wilmington, North Carolina. I travel
geographically convenient.
Yeah.
It is odd that that's where I go, but I have connections there. Not just connections there, friends that run that, and family in Wilmington. So that's where I tend to get all my comics. But there's really good comic books. Anytime I'm in a new town, I always try to go to whatever comic book store is in that town. I recommend doing that because you'll never know what you're going to find, what kind of back stuff, what kind of cool things that they're going to have. And I just like they would say, give a shout out. Buy something. Go to the dollar box. They're going to have a dollar box. Buy $1 comic, whether you already have it, whether you need it, whatever. Just buy something. Support them.
And the fact that we are a group of collectors, that's so much of the fun, is to get there and dig and search. And I think what you said is so true, because each comic store has kind of its own slant because the person who owns it is a collector. Right. And so they will have their own little niches that they want to fill in and be able to share with you. So. And
guess what? Ask your question about, do you have whatever you can think of? They'll know exactly what you're talking about, and it's a yes or a no, and it's a no, not right now, or I know Johnny down the street who has blah, blah, blah. Always filled with information about from Marvel to DC to independent. It's a great experience. And, we go to Comic Cons today. And this one's scanning that big long box all the time. I'm more the Funko, I'm over here. But I collected comic books too. So when we went for the DC and the Legion of Superheroes, I would go for the Spider-Man. I would go for Marvel. I had a bunch of Iron Mans and anything Marvel, just not, okay, he's got DC, I'm going to go this way. And I've recently started to kind of parse them out and get little boxes, and it's been awesome going through it.
But you always say, in one of her really important, valuable statements, it's all connected. And you think about, where would Funko be without comics?
Oh, yeah.
And where would entertainment today be without comics? I mean, you think about the movies and you think about the TV shows and things. So much of the great stuff comes from comics. Some of the storylines from our childhood.
Yeah.
Stan Lee. I mean, speaking of Stan Lee, he invented it all. They had a great exhibit at the Museum of Science and Industry, and it was awesome. You sat on a couch with Thing, and Hulk was behind you, but Stan Lee started it all. But the connection to the Funko, too, is I recently got this soda can, Funko, with the Spot. I'm like, what is he doing? And I remember this from 20, a long time ago. And I'm like, why? And I looked it up, and he's going to be in the new, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse or whatever. So we'll open this on a future whatever, see if I get that chase. But it's all connected. And so real quick, me, with the ad icons, Superman and Quick Bunny. What?
So I think we'll probably have to talk more about comics in the future, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Because that has controlled a lot of my collecting, a lot of your collecting when we just look at the pops alone. We haven't even shown you the comic book characters yet. And then for Michael, it really has controlled his collecting. Do you want to tell him what you're a big fan of?
Well, I do have an affinity towards Robin, the Boy Wonder, and I do have a lot of collectibles that's associated with Robin that I think we may look at some other point in the future.
I mean, that's going
Yeah.
to require a field trip because he can't bring it over here. We'd have to rent a U-Haul.
Yeah.
Right. But isn't Robin, is it in the print, or was it Batman 6, was it the TV series that really got you? Which came first for you? We weren't born yet in 66, but I mean, the repeats. What first, why Robin?
That's a great question. Honestly, the reason I focused on Robin was a very sensible reason. There wasn't a lot to collect. And so I was trying to control things at that point in time. Because I loved Batman and Robin. I did love the TV series. Obviously, there was something about, Batman, because I was reading this before I was even getting any comic books. And Batman was too massive. You couldn't collect Batman. I couldn't collect Batman. There was just too much. There was Batman this and Batman that. Robin, there was very few things that you could collect. So I'm like, this is how I can control things because, as I said, I do tend to get a little obsessive when it comes to things.
I appreciate a completist, absolutely.
And so that way I could collect it. It has now gotten bigger.
Bigger. And there have been a lot of Robins. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of them, so that makes it tricky.
But I can fence around it a little bit better with Robin.
Fencing about, and then this says it all. Batman 6 lives, and this was in 1985. Batman has like 66 lives. I mean, it doesn't stop here, but they just kept saying that, Batman from the serials, from the TV has, progressed, but it hasn't stopped yet. What do you think of how Batman in particular has changed from his cowl to his outfit to his colors to whatever, to Michael Keaton to Robert Pattinson? I mean, what do you think about, there's a new movie coming out next year. I mean, what do you think about, who's your favorite Batman? I guess there's so many.
There's so many.
Oh, that's a tough question.
It's a very tough question. I appreciate how the comics continue to try to reinvent the characters for a new generation. And I appreciate how they try to hold on to as much history as they can at the same time. I think when they try to completely, snap away from that history and do a complete, reboot, that tends to not grab the new people, and it then tends to lose the old people, and then in a very short period of time, they then come back to the old as close to possible, and then anything that they've done in the middle right there gets lost and frustrates everybody again. So I do appreciate what they do. Each one has had its own sort of fun nuance, I think, in most ways. I actually really liked the most recent Batman movie with Robert Pattinson. Some people didn't care for it. I thought it was pretty good. Obviously, the Christian Bale movies were great. You and I actually had extra roles on the first Dark Knight.
Yes.
Wow.
A little story we could probably tell some other time.
I'll get your autograph later.
Okay, thank you.
But all of them. I mean, the Batman and Robin with George Clooney were super fun. I mean, obviously they took a much more like 1960s approach and were a little bit more campy. Michael Keaton I think, since it was the first one that came out and it was the first one we saw and it was new, the whole thing was believe the hype and it was just, awe-inspiring at the time. Kind of like, switching over to Marvel. When I came out of Avengers, I couldn't speak. It was amazing.
I have said over and over again, I waited my whole life for that movie.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, and they really handled it well. I know,
Yeah.
me too.
Finally, yeah.
I mean, I know that sounds so corny, but it was amazing to me to sit in that theater and see them all together on one screen done at that quality. It was something I never thought I would get to when I was a kid reading comics.
Yeah. But remember Shazam?
Saturday
mornings when he would turn into Shazam.
Yeah.
And the Powers of Isis.
Yeah.
Remember that
Yes.
came
Right
out
after.
of it? And
Yes.
Bigfoot and There's some boy with Bigfoot.
I mean, finally, the technology, we've lived long enough to see the technology that brought these, from the pages to the screen, and they just keep going. But now, back to your point, full circle, that they keep going in different universes, and Iron Man, has a limp, or, Superman has gray hair, and what? But, it's crazy.
It can be hard to follow, and it can be, too much. I mean, it's funny that you would say that, because one of the things that I was, if we went down that road, that became so frustrating, particularly in the 90s, is it just became so commercial. So here, when they redid the X-Men in the 90s, here's the first issue, here's the first issue, here's the first issue, here's the first issue. They just kept putting the same thing out, and it became just such like a money grab.
Yeah.
And I think that turned off a lot of people because comics took a huge spike there for a while in the 90s, and they were going to be the next big thing. They were the Beanie Babies of the time for a hot minute. The Pops, for a second. It's going to be the great collectible. So they just kept putting all these things out that everybody wanted to collect, and all the different covers, and which one was going to be the right variant that was going to make the right amount of money. And it became too much for the average collector. And, so some people then would have to buy all of them because they're got problems.
It's a curse.
Let's
but
toast to the curse.
that also then
Right.
Jeez. But then it also stops people like me also from collecting any of them, because then you just have to say I can't.
We really could.
But on that note,
Okay.
I think we need to say, until next time, stay geeky.
Stay pickled.
Cheers. Thank you, Michael.
Thank
Thank you. So much stuff.